Whether or not you're a laid-back casual gamer, a die-hard MLG professional, or even a speedrunner, no matter your style, it's safe to bet that you have likely played a game that included loot boxes. Be it Star Wars Battlefront, Halo 5, Call of Duty, and many others, you have come across a loot box at least once while gaming. And if you're like me, you've probably wondered about the legitimacy of some of these loot boxes. Are they legal? Are they marketed gambling towards kids? Is there any way to definitively nail down exactly what they are? Well, would you believe me if I said that yes, there was a way to answer this? No? Okay, well maybe it's not that easy, but at the very least I can offer to you my take on the situation and maybe provide a possible solution to the entire problem that is loot boxes. So to first understand the legality, we must first understand the problem that many people face when talking about loot boxes, and that is the matter of, are they even legal? And to my limited knowledge, I would have to say yes, they are. I know many countries have banned loot boxes outright, citing them as gambling, but if we were to look up the definition of the word gambling, as we see here on dictionary.lawyerment.com, we are met with the following description. Gambling is the wagering of money or something of material value, often referred to as the stakes, on an event with an uncertain outcome with the primary intent of winning additional money or material goods. Typically, the outcome of the wager is evident within a short period of time. Additionally, it mentions that it's an activity characterized by a balance between winning and losing that is governed by a mixture of skill and chance. So with all that, what essentially are we looking at for a definition? Well, to me, it sounds exactly as it reads. You wager money with the intent to win additional money, and your wager is placed against an uncertain outcome where your only possible options are win or lose. So with that in mind, is there any possible way to determine if loot boxes are indeed gambling? For me, the answer is obvious. No. Loot boxes are not gambling under the previously mentioned definition and the interpretation that we can draw from it. As it stands, there is really no logical way to determine that loot boxes are gambling, and it's for one reason and one reason only. It's the fact that you can never lose. With loot boxes, if I pay $5 for a loot box, I'm getting what the developers assure me is $5 worth of content. Whatever that content may be, I have to take the word of the developers that the items and materials I get are worth the money I paid. Now, is it possible to prove that the items or materials are not worth the $5? Probably in some games, and in those cases it's up to the developers to correct their pricing and to do better. That is not something that I would say applies globally to all loot boxes in all games. Now granted, is my opinion going to matter any? Am I alone going to change the way the world views loot boxes? Am I going to be able to change the minds of the many world leaders who have banned them? Well, no, of course not. As a single person, I am powerless to do much of anything really, and I for one am not advocating for loot boxes as I myself don't really like them very much. But I'm probably the best at thinking about it logically because I love to think about these sort of things all the time. I love to ask that question of why in these scenarios. And with that, I think this leads perfectly into the next segment of the video. Now, I have argued with several people over this very topic over the years, one of which includes my best friend, of which it nearly destroyed our friendship over. But looking back, I still think my stance is arguably the right one. Because one thing I kept hearing from people is the argument of, but what if I get something that I think is worthless? I lose because it's not something that I want. To me, this is a non-issue. An opinion on what you got from a loot box is subjective, and it's nothing more. You may not like the armor you got, but somewhere else there might be a player who absolutely loves that armor. In this case, who's right? Whose side do we pick? You see, the problem is a lot of people nowadays value their opinions more than they value objective facts. But let's have some fun with this idea actually, and see how opinions can change the value of items and artificially create a win or lose scenario. Humoring for a minute that despite always getting something in return for your money, and now accounting for opinions making the difference, what all now becomes gambling? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind are Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, sports trading cards, basketball, baseball, hockey, football. All of those are now gambling, and as they are currently, it would also fall under being marketed towards kids, which, as mentioned before, many countries banned them. To further prove this point, mystery box toys such as Ryan's World Mystery Egg would 100% be gambling, and this is without a doubt geared towards children specifically. So how are opinions affecting these? Well, let's say you open up 5 packs of a particular sports trading card and you get several duplicates. Well, according to opinions, that is a loss because you now have duplicates which you are deeming worthless and cannot be used for anything, and as such reduces the value of those packs that you just spent money to purchase. But this can be further exploited because now that opinions are the baseline of what gambling is, purchasing any item could be a win or lose gamble. Maybe you didn't really like that sirloin steak that you bought the other day. Maybe you thought it tasted a bit bland or a little too tough. Or maybe you thought that the new Roomba you bought is just not performing as well as you expected it to. Any country that banned gambling would now have to ban literally everything else if we had to take opinions into account of what it means to gamble. And that is why I say it's a very slippery slope, because by adding just a single thing that can vary from person to person, it makes the situation so much worse. Which is why when it comes to making, passing, and repealing laws, they cannot use opinions as their baseline or as any form of foundation, because the courts must use objective facts only with their fair interpretation of the situation at hand in order to make justified and informed rulings. Now, I have talked to several people about this topic before writing the script because I wanted to have more than just my perspective. Maybe I wasn't looking at something from the right angle, or maybe I was missing something overall. After several conversations and many attempts to iron out a solution to the problem, I think I was able to come up with one thing that could work to help keep things not only fair, transparent, and within the legal boundaries. Simply put, any game that has loot boxes should make a section where all the potential items are available to get via loot box system has their prices made public. Furthermore, the dev should implement a code that would process the request of the loot box and take the purchase amount as a reference and use it against the item it picks at random until it can meet or exceed that minimum threshold. To clarify how this would work is very simple. Let's say I paid $3 for a silver loot box. The system would do the following. It would pick one item at random and compare it to the minimum threshold. If it doesn't meet or exceed it, it picks another item at random, and this process repeats until the minimum threshold is either met or exceeded. And once that whole process is done, it gives the items that it randomly chose. Or, let's say it's a system where it's a $3 box and it's giving me no more and no less than 8 items. The system could then pick the 8 items by random and then compare them all to the threshold. If the threshold is not met or exceeded, the system will take the lowest value item and swap it with another item at random and perform the check again. And as you can probably guess, this would repeat until the system sees that it has met or exceeded that $3 minimum, and I can now have my 8 items. Now, is this a bit of an inconvenience for developers? Sure, and probably a pain that no one would ever want to have to code. But to avoid this entire hassle of being called out for encouraging gambling, game devs could easily fix it with some transparency and a 100% guaranteed win rate, which would nullify any points the doubters may have. And with that, I think it's time to wrap things up. I know this might not have been a very interesting video, but it's definitely an interesting subject in its own right. And what's more is that I know some of you may very well disagree with me on it, but I would still love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, because the more people who share their input, the better. There is no definitive right or wrong answer to this problem, and it's something that we're all going to have to deal with for many more years, whether we like it or not, so why not talk about it? Anyways guys, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you would like to see more content in the future. And if you want to follow me on other social media, you can do so on Rumble and Gab Social. Just look up my name, MovieMaker2011Z, and you should have no problem finding me. I am going to let you know I'm not very active on those platforms yet, so do keep that in mind if you do choose so. And for anyone else who made it to the very end, I would like to quickly say thank you and I appreciate you all so very much. I hope you all have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.